I found an article yesterday that addresses even more thoroughly and in greater detail. One was written in the 60s on the Hebrew kings and all the controversial problems and contradictions because of the overlapping rule of the different kings and events that occurred concurrently when they couldn't have been because of the calculation of the time. Let's just take a look at that, and I uploaded it here. The times of rule of the Hebrew kings appears to have many errors and contradictions. So I went on the internet and I found this article, Edwin R. Thiel, A Solution to the Chronological Problem of the Hebrew Kings. They've got this site right here where I got it. You can double check it, do the same thing, you Google it, and just put it in, see where I got it from. And here it is. Keep digging down here. A Solution to the Chronological Problems of the Hebrew Kings. I transcribed it, all the pictures and everything else notwithstanding, but the original article is also available here. If you go into the article, into this magazine, you scroll on down. He wrote it in this particular magazine. There's the actual magazine. Download it. There it is. I would go there because there's some graphs and everything else. It would take some time to reproduce. I'd have to just do it by one step at a time. And they give you the statistics by which this author does such a great job providing the graphs. Oops. First we have to go look for, that's right, we have to go look for Hebrew Kings. There it is. There's the article. Because this magazine has a number of articles by Edwin R. Thiel. That's the article that was transcribed by a fellow on the internet. There's his first graph, giving the approximate time of rule. And then Judah and Israel, and how the years actually do coincide to precisely 79, as according to what the Bible says. But the dates, if you go according to your own idea of how to reckon the dates, you're going to come up with contradiction. That's doing editorializing. So, let's take a look at the article itself. A Solution to the Chronological Problems of the Hebrew Kings. Edwin R. Thiel has brought us order out of chaos in his examination of the Hebrew reigns of the monarchies, thus giving us renewed confidence in the accuracy of the Scriptures. Perhaps most perplexing of all attacks made on the Bible are focused on this issue, are focused on the chronology of the Hebrew kings, because of so much evidential apparent contradiction. While this subject may at first glance seem uninteresting and even boring, the implications of contradictory data are considerable, as skeptics and Bible scholars alike have well understood. If the Bible is no good here, then it's probably no good anywhere. Little wonder, then, that for more than 2,000 years scholars have wrestled with synchronisms and lengths of reigns for the rulers of Judah and Israel in the books of Kings. It can be shown, however, that charges of error in the king lists are not justified once you know the system. Once the basic chronological principles employed by the Hebrew recorders are understood, the regnal data of kings are amazingly reliable and may be woven into a pattern of internal harmony in accord with contemporary chronology at every point where a precise contact can be established. At first glance, however, disagreement rather than agreement seems to predominate. In 1 Kings 15:25, Nadab in Israel is said to have begun his reign of 2 years in the 2nd year of Asa of Judah, but according to 1 Kings 15:33, he was succeeded by Baasha in the 3rd year of Asa. Oh, it sounds like, somebody didn't get together with somebody else and get their facts straight. Unless there's something else, and that's what we're going to look at. That would give him only 1 year rather than 2. According to 1 Kings 16:23, Omri began in the 31st year of Asa and reigned 12 years. But according to 1 Kings 16:29, he was succeeded by Ahab in the 38th year of Asa, which would give him only 7, not 12 years. Something's wrong here. It's so obvious that there's an error. Why didn't these authors, over the decades, the centuries, scribes try to say, well, we're going to fix this, but there's no attempt to fix it, showing that there's an honesty there. They're going to keep repeating the error if it's there, but maybe it's not an error. The statement in 2 Kings 3:1 that Joram began to reign in Israel in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat and of Judah appears to disagree with the statement in 2 Kings 1:17 that he began in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat. According to 2 Kings 8:25, Uzziah of Judah began in the 12th year of Joram of Israel, but according to 2 Kings 9:29, he began in the 11th year, and so on. In 2 Kings 1:17, Jehoram of Israel began the 2nd year of Joram in Judah, and Jehoram began in Judah before Jehoram came on the throne of Israel. But according to 2 Kings 8:16, Jehoram began in Israel before Joram began in Judah, but Jehoram began in the 5th year of Joram. On and on and on and on. So we can look at this. 2 Kings 9:24-27, Jehu slew Joram of Israel and Uzziah of Judah on the same occasion. How did that happen? So Jehu began in Israel at the same time that Athaliah succeeded Uzziah in Judah. And according to 2 Kings 15:25-27, Pekahiah in Israel was slain and succeeded by Pekah in the 52nd year of Azariah of Judah. I'm going to break my fingers here on my mouth. So the years of Israel was from the beginning of Jehu to the death of Pekahiah should be equal to the years of Judah from the accession of Athaliah to the death of Uzziah in the 52nd year. But the years of the two nations for this period are as follows. Folks, see the original PDF of the table. Take a look at. See, I got to go to the magazine rather than reduplicate it. But you have the article here, and you can just punch in the graphs. Then you have to remember Hebrew Kings, because this is a magazine. So look for Hebrew Kings. Second time, there's the article. And here's the first graph on the right-hand column as it comes up. See? 114 years, 7 months. Israel. And Judah, add it all up, 128 years. Whoa! But the scripture says same number of years according to the way they put it. How does that happen? Well, he's going to resolve it. That's the problem to resolve. Not only is the total of Israel not the same as the total for Judah, but the years for Israel are about a dozen years in excess of the years of contemporary Assyria, while those of Judah have long been known to be about a quarter of a century in excess of contemporary Assyria. Difficulties such as these have brought many of the world's leading biblical scholars to the conclusion that the numbers of the Hebrew kings are grossly in error and are not to be relied on for the establishment of a sound chronological pattern of Hebrew history. That puts a big damper on everything. What about the easier facts? These are difficult to get together and are overall wholesome, not trustworthy. In the Encyclopedia Britannica, we have the following opinion expressed. Errors which have vitiated more or less the entire chronology have crept in. The length of the reigns of the various kings is not the same according to the traditional and synchronistic figures. Since, however, it is clear on various grounds that these synchronisms are not original, any attempt to base a chronological system or scheme on them may be disregarded. To disregard that, but let's read the rest? No. Unless Assyrian or Babylonian records touch those of Israel and Judah, no certainty is possible. So we're left in the dark. Do we trust this book? And boy, the people have been harping on this for decades, for centuries. Nor, in spite of the ingenuity expended on the problem, have scholars reached an agreement. The presence of errors in the biblical figures is patent, but it is not equally clear where the errors lie. Albright, the renowned American scholar, said, "It is incredible that all these numbers can have been handed down through so many editors and copyists without often becoming corrupt. They're still consistently showing the error. We note that the century between 842 and 742 BC is occupied in kings by 4 Judahite reigns, totaling 128 years. The excess of some 24 years can be eliminated entirely by disregarding the total reigns attributed to the kings of Judah and basing our revised estimates on their reigns solely on the synchronisms with Israel, which throughout contradict the regnal totals of the kings of Judah. By similar methods, we are in a position to revise the chronology on the period. This makes us we have to be an editor, which antedates the rebellion of Jehu. In this period now, however, most of the synchronisms were calculated by some later editor, so they cannot be used as primary material, though they do enable us to correct the regnal totals for the rulers of the Amride dynasty. Wow. So you're doing all kinds of machinations to make the Bible look good. Just chuck it out or find out what the problem is. And that's what this author did. A point of primary importance in resolving the problems is the method employed for reckoning the regnal years. Now listen, according to the accession year system, postdating the year when a king began his reign is termed his accession year, and his first official year begins with the next new year. There's the problem. Years reckoned in this way are equal to actual years at absolute time. According to another method, however, antedating, or the non-accession year system, the year when a king actually began his reign is termed his first year, and his second official year begins with the next new year. So, if a president begins to become president, like our new president-elect, in this year, he didn't start in January. And he didn't start as soon as he won the election the previous year. He starts when he starts, and it's not 12 months the first year. Since the last year of the old king and the first year of the new ruler are the same year, years reckoned according to this method are counted twice, and therefore totals increase by 1 year for every reign over absolute time. When this system is employed, it is necessary to deduct 1 year from the official length of every reign in order to keep in accord with absolute time and with reigns reckoned in accordance with the accession year method. That's how they did it. If you just read. People don't read. A comparison of the lengths of reign of the rulers of Israel and Judah for the period immediately after the disruption reveals the system each nation then was using. Jeroboam began in Israel in the same year that Rehoboam began in Judah, and Ahaziah died in Israel in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat of Judah. When the 86 official years of Israel from this period are reduced to actual years for each king, they are actually equal to the 79 years of Judah. Thus, the numbers of Judah and Israel, which throughout this period appear to contradict each other, are found to be harmonious. And the fact is revealed that at this time Judah employed accession year reckoning, and Judah followed the non-accession year method. The following are the numbers involved. Now you have to see the original text there, and let's see where we've got it here. That's the first where we show a discrepancy. Okay. 79 years in Judah, total, and actual absolute years. And Israel, the official, but the actual, both 79. The actual years are 79 both. You have your system, you say when the guy became king, but that doesn't mean he got the whole year or started at the beginning of the year. Now it's simplified, and it turns out to reconcile. So much an answer for all the skeptics. Okay. Let's go back to where we were. Careful study of the data reveals that Judah employed the accession year system from Rehoboam to Jehoshaphat, but then shifted to Israel's non-accession year system when, in a period of rapprochement between Judah and Israel, Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, was married to Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. Judah followed the non-accession year system for the reigns of Jehoram and Ahaziah and Athaliah and Joash, and then shifted back to the accession year system with Amaziah and followed it to the end of its history. Well, you have to just read that. You have to be a real nitpicker on details, which is not boring. This guy did a tremendous job when you're working in it. But when you're not doing a good job, you get bored with it and you want to look at other things. And that's where people can be overcome by skeptics. That this change was made at this time is shown by the two synchronisms for the accession of Ahaziah in the 11th year of Joram, according to the old accession year system, but in the 12th year of Joram, according to the newly adopted non-accession year method. In Israel, non-accession year reckoning was employed from Jeroboam to Jehoahaz, but under Joash, Israel adopted the accession year system simultaneously with Amaziah of Judah and used it to the end. Both Judah and Israel followed their own systems of reckoning for the lengths of reign, of their own rulers, and also for the synchronistic years of the Jew rulers.